Welcome to this second tutorial about programming in Friend. And in this tutorial we're going to look into how to use Friend modules when building Friend apps. Now Friend modules are usually used to calculate stuff on the server or connect to server resources or to access a database. And so in this tutorial, we're going to make a kind of small chat application that's going to put messages into a MySQL database. In order to complete this tutorial, it is expected that you have FriendOS installed on a local computer and that you know how to use MySQL. So we're going to go in and out of the MySQL console, create database, and interact with it, and also some knowledge about the PHP language. We're going to build a PHP module. So let's see how this goes. So the first thing I'm going to do is to log into my Friend environment. And well, let's just fire up the code editor. So I'll get right into it. I'll just create my main JSX file, which will launch my application, and let's get started from there. So application run with the optional message. We save that. We can create a project folder. Boom. Call that chat thing. And in here we have main.jsx. So, and we go to projects and we take new project, projects, chat thing, and we just save the project file there. Call it 1.0. Put in my name in here. It's a friend project. It's chat thing and simple chat using a friend module. We need to add a privilege, so we're going to have a module that we call chat thing. And other than that, we may want to have the system module. There we go, and we're going to have our disks all. Boom, that's what we need. And as for projects files, we're just going to add our main file and then save that. And now we're in the project. So in order to use the database, I'm going to simply use the Friend database. You could use your own database, but for simplicity, I'm just going to add a table in the Friend database. So, and I'm going to do it even simpler. I'm going to assume that Friend has access to the database. So I'm going to simply use my root user to enter into the MySQL console. So to get there, I'm going to open up a new terminal. And I'm simply going to enter in and create a table. And essentially I'm going to type in the create form in front of you here. So essentially this is the table structure, and that is create table chat thing, and we're going to have ID big int, let me see, and we're going to have user ID, big int, the not null, and we're going to have text, and that's just going to be text, and we're going to have date created, date time, and receiver ID, which is another user, for example. I'm not going to really use that in this tutorial. And then we do primary key is ID. And of course we want the chat think ID to be auto increment. And that should be it. So I'll just format this so that you can see it. Here we go. And of course I'll add a link to the tutorial so that you can download it. Okay, so here we have the chat thing. So I'm just gonna put that into my friend-up database. I'm using the friend-up database and I'm just creating this table. Okay, so I have some errors, of course, which is not being preparing this in advance. So I guess you may have to be a bit careful. Of course, you could be using front end when doing this. Listen, create table chat thing, and boom, we have it. So now we have our little chat thing database. Now I've added my Linux system here, and this is useful if you're going to build a module inside a friend. What you do is you do add storage, you go and you find local server, you type in the name, and that, in my case this is Predator, and then you just put in wherever your home drive is, for example, which is what I'm doing, and then add storage, and then you're going to get the layout of your Linux home folder in here, and here I have my friend up. And in here I have my build folder, which I'm using for friend in here, with the modules. And so I'm going to create a new module in here called chat thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And what you could do is that you could probably, at this point in time, have two friend create editors, just simply because you don't want to mix the module project with the friend project. And for my work here, I'm simply going to create one file for the module. So I'll have projects on my Linux disk, friend up, build, modules, and now I have my chat thing. So I'm just going to create my module in here, simple PHP, save that, go into Predator, projects, friend up, build, modules, chat thing, and I just call it module PHP. And that's really all you need to start getting friend functionality. But I'll also do some simple things. So I can just go in and steal some code from a different module. So I'll include some globals from the doc module. I'll just simply paste that in there. And so what I do get there is the arguments. So friend modules, when they're run, they're not run on an Apache server. They're run by FriendCore. And the link between PHP and FriendCore is that it's created in a way where PHP is actually executed in a pipe, and it's actually executed on the command line. So you don't get post variables, you don't get these request variables. You get the command line arguments from kind of the Linux shell, and those are in args. So that's essentially where you get those. And so when you're posting variables in the JavaScript application, you do generate request variables that you post in an AJAX query to FriendCore, and the workspace either posts those requests as an HTTP request or as a WebSocket request, and mostly it is actually done with WebSockets. So gets into FriendCore parses these variables in your request, and then creates a command line string that it sends to PHP. So that's how that works. So on the front end, it works just like normal web code, and on the server, it's done a bit differently. So as long as you don't expect to use request variables in PHP, and you understand that you have to use these global args, then you're good to go. And of course we also include the database object, which is created in friend, and the user, which is the authenticated user that receives the requests from the web requests, and the logger if you want to use the PHP logging system. Probably not going to use that here. Also, we include the friend API for PHP, just so that we have all that going. Again, not going to really use that much except the SQL database access. So, what we're going to do first is what we always do. We're going to create our window for the chat interface. So let's go ahead and do that. And of course we do the on close to make sure the application quits when we close the window. And now we create, so we created our window, so we can go ahead and execute that in here. And so here's our chat window, and we can close it. So now we're going to put a template on the view window so that we have something to work with. And in fact, what we could do is that, well, let's add some table data later. Add some rows to the table later, but let's just make a basic interface. So create a file object. And we haven't created this file yet, so perhaps we should just go ahead and do that. There we go. And then we can have a div class content full, which is our full width, height, absolute position to element. And we can have a div that we give an ID messages, and we can have a div with the ID input, and the input has an input type text, placeholder your message, and we have a button which we give a class button icon small fa send, I think that's what it's called, and then we can just write send in there. So that's not going to have any styling right now. We're just going to put this template on the view window. So that should be everything we needed. So we have, see, open view window, on close, quit application, load main HTML template, set on window, view window. Okay, so let's try that. And here we go. Of course, doesn't have any styling or anything, but let's add that styling, and we're going to just do that inline. Of course, you can use separate style sheets files if you want. So messages, we're just going to simply make this, you know, essentially cover the entire thing. So we're just going to not use the class system in friend just for simplicity here. Just so that you can see how you can use your existing skills in HTML and JavaScript to create friends easily. So friend applications easily. So okay, so we're having one like this. What we could do, we could add one friend class on there just to have a border bottom, and smooth scrolling. I want that as well. Okay, and then of course we have the input div, go. It's also absolutely positioned. Top is now calc, 100% minus 50 pixels. Left is 0, width is 100%, and height is 50 pixels. We're also going to put this in a box sizing border box, just to allow the padding to work nicely. So we're going to add a class here with padding. Actually, in fact, we're also going to do that on the messages. So let's see how this looks like now. So now we have the messages on the bottom, and above here we have the message list. So I think we're gonna add a color just to see it. So let's just go with a gray color at the moment, and we can have white text for now. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we have a problem with our messages. Missing a line, and there we go. So now we have our chat thing, but we also want to increase the sizes here a little bit. So let's go on the input field itself. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of autocomplete because sometimes these autocomplete features are a bit dumb. Let me see. So probably we're going to have a width that is something like 80%. And then the button should be 20%. There may be some margins that we're not paying attention to here. So let's see how we remedy that. So if I close this and then open new one, you see it falls below. So how to alleviate that is to remove the margins, at least on the left and right. And the same thing we do with the bottom button. There we go. And of course, there must be something else we can do. And you know what? What we can do is we can absolutely position this thing. Then we have total control over the layout. It's not something you want to do in every single case, but in our case, it's something we want to do. So, okay. And of course now the input field doesn't accept the padding whatsoever. So what we will do for this tutorial is that we'll just set these values. Hard code. Of course, when you're building a UI, you can put some more thinking into what you're actually doing. For this tutorial, that's a bit out of scope, but it's just simply it's important to really envision the UI before you get started, and perhaps even use some diagramming software to make sure that you got it right before starting to implement it in code. Okay, so let's see if we can make this a little bit smaller. Okay, this is better. We can now increase our button length, and that's starting to look like something, and I'm just going to increase the height of the input as well. So I'll try with 25 pixels. Yeah, still missing about 2 pixels there, 2 or 3. So let's put it on an extra 3. And yeah, that is probably 1 too much, so we go to 27. Alright, yeah, that's better. So now we have a simple form with a send button. And to interact with the send button, we may want to essentially just have an action on the send button. We do onClick is send message. Okay, and now we need to include a script for our main view window. There we go. Create a new file. There we go. Application run. You don't always have to use this, but it's important to remember that the application run function is only run after all your assets in a specific scope or context has been loaded. So if you just go ahead and start adding scripts directly into the code that runs immediately, you may have unexpected results. So if you have code that's supposed to run immediately when the view window appears on the screen, you put it in the application run to be safe. Okay, so we have created a send message function, and we just declare that here. That's number one, but we also want the receive messages function, or perhaps refresh messages, which will refresh all messages. And I'll essentially do that as we go. So we use now the friend API to interact with our module. So in this other window here, we have now in the build folder, which is where friend is running, we have added our module chat thing. And this one will essentially handle the requests from our chat application. So what we want to do is to just simply send a message, and we'll send a message to a user that doesn't exist, because right now we're in a single user modality. So let's just invent a call on this new chat thing module that we added. So send message will create a new module, which is chat thing, and when the module has executed, we have a return code and return data, and we execute send or store or send message. And then we add parameters. And the parameters can be described as follows. Message. And then we use the GE shortcut for document get element by ID. Input. Get elements by tag name. Input 0, so the first input element, dot value. Simple as that. It's not pretty, but we're just going to do that. And then recipient is 0. We just send it to 0. And that's really all the parameters we need. And once executed, we do refresh messages, which should be in plural down here. And for refreshing the messages, what we simply do is we create the same type of module, and we create a new module called refresh messages. And in params, we don't have anything. So we're just going to assume that it wants all the messages from the user. And once we get this back, we're simply going to show the data in our messages list. So messages inner HTML is RC. Get the return code in there. So let's see what happens. So in the module, now we have some module calls that expects that the module has the command send message and has the command refresh messages. So we're going to create those here. We're going to do it very simple. Not going to do a lot of structure in there. So if args command equals send message, and if args command equals refresh messages. These are the two we need. And for send message, we're simply going to save a new message. And as you can see here, we had this database table, which simply has these few columns: user ID, ID, text, date created, receiver ID. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a dbio object. O equals new dbio. And chat thing is our table that we created. O user ID is our user, which is this object that's available here. O text is args, and what was it that we sent in params? Message. So it's args this time, message, because this one has been sent using our Ajax WebSockets or HTTP request. So this one goes as a primary kind of request parameter, and this one goes in a JSON structure to the Frankcore server that keeps this structure. And so you get that into the args. Then we have that, and we want to save the date that this was created, and then we just do date DHIS for a date stamp or date time, and then receiver ID is 0, and I think that's all we need to do. O save, and now we have saved it. And then we can do, if it saved it, then we can do die, which is PHP's way to output some information to the client and exit. Okay, and then we put in the friend separator, which is essentially just a normal bracket, expression mark, dash dash, separate, dash dash, and then close tag. And that's all we want to do there. Now, for receiving messages, or refreshing all the messages, we're simply going to load all of them. And so we're going to do is rows equals SQL database fetch objects, and then we're going to make a little query, and we're going to put that as in an if, and we're going to do select everything from chat thing where user ID equals user ID, order by date created, and then we want the newest first, so descending. That's it, and then we're going to simply die. Okay, separator, and then JSON encode the rows. And if none of these are okay, then we just die fail. Boom. There we have it. Let's try it. Okay, so let's see what happens. Start my thing, write hello world, and I hope it works. Okay, and it says okay on the top. See that? So the module call actually worked. Okay, so now we want to do all the messages. So we're going to do if RC is not okay, then we can do alert error. There was an error, and I think this one is written title and text. We'll see if we get this one sometime, and then we'll simply return. But if we have an OKRC, we can do let messages equal JSON parse rd, which is the return data, and then we can make a string which is empty, and then for let a equals 0, a is less than messages, a plus plus. We can just simply add a div class message, and then we can do the date in a paragraph, emphasized, and then we'll have our little message. That should be it, and then we output that in here. And now that I assume that we have one message, I'm simply going to refresh the messages on startup as well when the window opens. Okay, so let's see what happens. There we go. I'll type something else. And aha, I want actually the messages to come in ascending order. So I'll just do that here in the module, ascending. So now when I start it, I get my latest message at the end. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll make a little bit of styling of my little message bubbles. So I call the class of the messages for message. So I do messages, message, and then I'll do background color, white, margin, 0, 0, 20 pixels, 0, border radius, let's give it 10, padding, 10, box sizing, border box, color, a gray color. Sometimes nice not to have too much contrast. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so it didn't trigger. So what is it that happens? So we have a class message. All that is fine. And it's message, not messages. And here we go. So, and now we're gonna add two messages. So message 1, send, message 2, send. And now you can see the layout is kind of messed up. So what we're gonna do then is that on the messages, we're gonna say overflow auto, which means it will scroll if it's overflowing. And on the input thing, we're gonna do background default to give the div containing the inputs some kind of background. And of course we're gonna have an on key down is message key down because we want to be able to send messages by simply hitting enter. And we'll add the event of the input field in there. So let's go into our main and then just do function message key down with the event if e which is, I think it's 13, that's the key. And so what I'll also do when I send the message is that I will simply remove the content of the value. So let's see how that works. So scroll down, test. Okay, so I have the wrong key. So I'll have to figure out which key is it that I need to do that. So I'll simply open up my console and I'll output which keys we're getting when we're doing different things. So up with this one. Okay. and we'll run our little chat thingy. E is not defined. Okay. Let's see what's going on here. Aha! I don't actually have to have a parameter on the on key down because that is automatically added by the browser. And it has no. Actually, that's not true. That's not true at all. It's called event. Let's see if that is the right one. Yes. And behold, I was right. It is 13. And that is the new line. Okay, so we got that going. The other thing that you see is that I have to now scroll manually. So what I'll do in refresh messages, I'll do the automatic scroll. So messages dot scroll top equals messages offset height. So we'll just always scroll to the bottom on this one. Boom. So now we have a basic chat system. Now what I could do is that I could create a different user that would post into the same receiver. It would have a different user ID and I could style that. So let's see if we can do something like that. What we could do is we can create a new user with our system app. Let me see, or see if we have one already. So in the system app we have testy. So let's use the testy user in here. And so what I'm going to do is, now I have my home drive. Go into my home drive, I have my projects, I have my chat thing, so I'm going to pack that, do a zip, and compress that. And I'm going to just download it here. I'm going to log in with my testy user. So take this one. And now I'm in with my testy. I'm going to drag this to my desktop. I'll go in, I'll unpack it, decompress files, and here we go. And then I can go in and I can run my main file. And there we go. And let's see what happens. So I have a different one. Now, what we could do now with this new user, who has like an empty list of messages, is that we could go back to our module on refresh and simply, so let's close all these windows, clean a little bit up like that. So let's just list every single chat message. So I go on testy and I say testy was here, and as you can see we get everything up, right? So what we want to do then on the JavaScript, we can actually get the workspace or the user ID on application user ID. So let's find our application scope in here. It doesn't really matter, you can even use friend creates one, and then it has application user ID. See that? So now we can compare the messages, if it's my message or if it's somebody else's message. So, and we haven't added the nickname or anything, we can do that as well, but let's just do it like this. Extra class we add in here. And then we say let xcl equals messages a user ID is application user ID, and if that's the case then the class is mine. If not, it is nothing. And I'll add a space here so that it actually create two classes, message mine and just message. And then I'll style that, so if I have my message, I want that one to be white, but the other message, not mine, will be blue. Light blue at that. So let's see what happens. Here we go. Oh, and the scroll is not working because it's not taking into account the height of the content. So I guess that will be inner height, if I'm not mistaken. Or actually, isn't it scroll height or so? Let's just do inner height for now, see if that helps us. No, it doesn't help us. I wonder if it's scroll height. Sometimes these parameters are easy to forget. So you can see that my latest ones, this is Hogna. And then on his test user here, I can say this is testy. And actually, and we haven't updated the chat thing. So we'll go back, make a new archive. Actually, what we could do, we could just put it on the Predator disk and then both could access the same. Or we could make actually a work group so that both could access that. So let's just add a work group now. We have work group 1. In here we have testy. And we should also have myself. So work group 1 has 2 users. And then I'm going to add storage. And I'm going to have a work group disk. And number, or we can call it work group disk. Put it to 500 megabytes. That's fine for now. Work group 1, add storage. Now both should have that disk. So what we're going to do, we're going to just move our entire project over to that. So then I'll close this one, I'll close the module, and I'm going to go in and move our project to the workgroup disk. There we go. And then run it again. And here we have it. And then I go in on testy, chat thing, and there we go. So this is myself here, testy is white, here testy is blue, and so that one is working. So that's basically how you do it. And of course you could do polling, or you could set up and use our WebSocket to push messages and do notifications and those type of things. But that's out of scope for this tutorial. So hope you enjoyed that, and see you next time.